Hey guys, like I said in my update video, now that I have a YouTube channel set up, I'm going to start releasing my old videos, which some of you haven't seen, of course. Before I do that, I'm actually going to talk about a video that wasn't widely released, that I didn't put in the Pulse. And that is my review for Annabelle, which is the first review I ever made. And there's actually a story to tell with this one. It was back in January of 2021. I had just started my film and digital media class. The Pulse was starting to set up for that semester. And our teacher, Mr. Jametta, gave us a form to fill out with kind of what roles we wanted to be in and what other ideas we could bring to the table. And as you can imagine, the light bulb went off in my head, and I realized that I wanted to be the school's film critic. So that same week, I was coming up with a sample review that I could make. I was going to get the part no matter what, but I still wanted to demonstrate to the crew what I could do. Now, at the time, my friends and I were watching through the entire Conjuring franchise because The Conjuring 3 was going to come out in a few months. It just so happened that the weekend of that brainstorming week, I was going to go over to a friend's house and we were going to watch Annabelle. So I decided to make my sample review on that. So I go over, I watch the movie, I come back, I take a lot of notes, I film myself, and then I take the footage that I collect and cut it up into a video around 8 minutes in length. Now, I had no idea of the time limits that special segments would have to follow. So Mr. Jametta told me that if there was any hope of the review making it into an episode, it would have to be 5 minutes or less. I wasn't too happy about that, but at the same time, I was very determined to promote myself that very first episode of Pulse 2021. So I went back to the editing room and I chopped down this 8-minute video to the 5 minutes you're going to see now. Enjoy. Annabelle is the prequel to the 2013 horror hit, The Conjuring. If you haven't seen The Conjuring, go check it out. But today we're going to be talking about the first of many spin-offs to it. The film follows the story of Annabelle's first owners, Mia and John Form, a young couple expecting their first child. After being attacked by members of a satanic cult one night, Mia and John are tormented through the doll by a demon. This film is brought to us from the director of Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Thankfully, Annabelle is nowhere near as bad as that film. I also don't hate it like other people do, but that being said, it's not a good film either. But let's start off with the positives. Our two main actors, Annabelle Wallis and Ward Horton, do their roles well enough. Going into the film, I half expected them to be bad. They were serviceable. Also, the film has an interesting setup. The home invasion sequence is easily one of the best and most memorable scenes in the entire film. It also adds an interesting element in that the film is not just about demons. It deals with this cult, and whenever they talk about it, I was interested. Annabelle is also a darker film than The Conjuring, and aspects of that are refreshing. There are a couple of scenes in particular, not going to spoil them, that do demonstrate that the filmmakers are willing to take risks in regards to imagery and storytelling. But probably the biggest positive I can swing at this film is the doll itself. Just the appearance of Annabelle is unsettling. Even when she's fresh out of the box, she still looks evil. This film is widely hated, and I can understand why. But I can't help but see some good intentions here and there. The bad still outweighs the good, and the first thing that comes to mind is that Annabelle is predictable to a fault. The jump scares can be seen coming from a mile away. There are times where a jump scare is taking place, and you know it's going to happen, and just in the time period before it happens to when it does, it just gets boring. And going back to what I said about predictability, The Conjuring, you could say, was a predictable film, but it was elevated by James Wan's talent and how he filmed it and how it looked, and also the scares. Although I personally wasn't scared by the film, I could admire the craft that went into it. With Annabelle, it's just a generic horror film. Second thing that comes to mind is that the story takes a while to finally get going. I watched this film with my friends, and we had to pause it at one point so that one of us could get snacks. And when I paused it, I looked at the runtime and how far we went into the film. We were over the halfway mark, and the film still felt like it was in its early stages. A film like Alien takes a similar approach, but that film sets up real tension. Sure, Annabelle has some creepy moments, but few things after the home invasion segment feel that substantial. The next two things I'm going to mention are some of my biggest issues with this film. One of them being that the film never earns its title. There isn't enough Annabelle in this film titled Annabelle. Sure, when she's shown, she's scary, but she has no real presence. The only reason I can see the film being called Annabelle is because it's more marketable. Anyone who's seen The Conjuring knows who Annabelle is, and she actually has some memorable scenes in that film. And finally, adding on to that, after seeing the first two films in this series, Annabelle just seems to work better as an add-on, not her own thing. Just thinking about the limitations of the doll make my claim understandable. The doll can't move herself. She needs a demon inside of her. And even then, it's just to move her from one location to another. Besides a haunting face, nothing else is really that interesting about Annabelle. In the end, Annabelle is a film that I don't think needed to exist. It provides some interesting ideas, creepy moments, and some risky decisions, but ultimately falls due to its predictability, slow pace, and the evidence of a studio just trying to make more money. I'm going to have to give Annabelle a C-. Entertainment value, that's a 4 out of 10, and I'll modify my phrase recommendation. I say skip it unless you're like me and you're watching the entire series. Before I end this video, I'd just like to say the intent of this segment is to talk about some new releases and some older films too, but I would also like to hear from you guys. What films would you like me to review? You can contact me through the email on the screen. Have a nice day, and I'll see you next time. You can tell that I cut a lot of corners trying to make this happen. I would look at the footage and I would just cut out every frame that I could, and it just came out very choppy. But nevertheless, it was the video that I had. So I take it back to Jametta, and he ultimately tells me that I shouldn't release it in the Pulse. And his rationale is that for my first video, I shouldn't do it on a movie that has demons in it. That makes a bit more sense now that I've gotten complaints because of what I'm doing, but I still think that that's kind of ridiculous. I think it's helpful to point out that two of my biggest influences for what I do are movie critics Chris Stuckman and Sean Chandler. If you look at a lot of my reviews, you can see the bone structure of how Stuckman makes his reviews. But the whole ending of this Annabelle video, where I'm giving not only a letter grade, but an entertainment score and a phrase recommendation, that's just a total ripoff of Chandler. I didn't want to admit it at the time, of course, but it's true. You know how film directors have their own opinions of their movies after they've made them? For the longest while, this was my least favorite review that I've made. And it's still one of my lesser ones for sure. But it's one that I strangely enjoy watching the most. And I think that it's because despite the things that went on behind the scenes and the clear editing issues, I just got it done. I set out to do something, and to the extent that I could at the time, I followed through. And that's something that, even though I'll always see a flawed video, I'll at least be satisfied with that. Before I end the video, I want to point something else out that I said in my update video, and that's that when I said that I'm no longer going to be reviewing films that I don't like. And I've seen a potential issue with that. The implication that if I don't make a review for a movie, that I didn't like it. So I'm taking the time right now to clear up if one of you have thought, gee, Brett didn't review The Batman. I wonder if he didn't like it. Well, no, I really enjoyed that movie. It's just that it left me with quite a bit to process because it was such a distinct interpretation of the character. When I make these videos, I like to have a complete opinion. And I realized that to finalize my thoughts, I would need to rewatch the movie, which I haven't yet. But if you want my general thoughts, great movie, go out and see it. Easily top 10 of the year material. Stay tuned as I release more of these older reviews. As always, have a great day.